If you've ever felt too small, too young, too unqualified, or too overlooked to face the giant standing in front of you, this story was written for you. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to see your own struggle a little differently. Let's set the scene. This story takes place in the valley of Eila, a strip of land between two armies. The Israelites camped on one hill, and the Philistines on the other. Between them lay the valley, and in that valley walked a monster of a man named Goliath. The Bible describes him as being over 9 feet tall. Picture that for a second. 9 feet. His armor alone weighed around 125 pounds. The head of his spear weighed 15 pounds of solid iron. This was not a man you challenged for fun. This was a walking weapon, a Nicnao Italiano. Every single day, morning and evening, for 40 days, Goliath walked out into that valley and shouted the same challenge. Choose a man and let him come down to me. If he can fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us. 40 days. Let that sink in. 40 days of an entire army trained soldiers. King Saul included, frozen in fear. Nobody moved. Nobody volunteered. The Bible says plainly that when Saul and all Israel heard the Philistines' words, they were dismayed and terrified. Here's the first lesson before we even get to David. Giants don't just attack once. They wear you down with repetition. That bill that keeps showing up, that diagnosis that keeps looming, that relationship that keeps hurting, that fear that keeps whispering the same lie every single morning. Sometimes the giant isn't the size of the problem, it's the persistence of it. But into this valley of fear walks someone nobody was expecting. David wasn't even supposed to be there. He was the youngest of 8 brothers, and while his older brothers were off fighting in Saul's army, David was back home doing what he always did, tending his father's sheep in the fields of Bethlehem. Think about that for a moment. While the important people were on the battlefield, David was doing the unglamorous, unnoticed, repetitive work of shepherding. Nobody was filming him. Nobody was applauding him. He was just faithfully showing up, day after day, protecting sheep that couldn't even thank him. But here's what's incredible. That quiet, unnoticed season was actually preparing him for the very moment that would define his life. David's father, Jesse, sent him to the battle lines simply to deliver food to his brothers and check on how they were doing. That's it. That was David's entire mission that day. Grab some bread and cheese, walk to the camp, check on his brothers, come back. He had no intention of fighting anyone. But when David arrived, he heard it, Goliath's voice, echoing across the valley, defying the armies of the living God. And something in David shifted. He didn't see a giant. He saw an insult against everything he believed in. He asked the soldiers standing around him, almost in disbelief, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? His older brother Eliab overheard him and became furious. He accused David of pride, of coming just to watch the battle, of neglecting the sheep. Isn't that so familiar? The moment you start to rise up and speak boldly about your purpose, sometimes the people closest to you are the first ones to doubt you, mock you, or try to shrink you back down. But David didn't let his brother's words define him. He simply sighed, "What have I done now? Was it not just a word?" And he turned away and kept asking questions, kept building conviction. Word eventually reached King Saul about this young shepherd boy talking boldly about the giant. Saul called for David, and David said something that still gives me chills every time I read it. "Let no one's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight this Philistine." Saul looked at him, a teenager, no armor, no military training, and said what everyone was thinking. "You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight him, for you are but a youth, and he has been a man of war from his youth." This is the moment. This is where most people would have backed down. The king himself just told David he wasn't qualified, but David's response reveals the secret to his courage. David didn't argue about his qualifications. Instead, he told Saul his track record, not with people, but with God. He said, "Your servant used to keep sheep for his father, and when there came a lion, or a bear, and took a lamb from the flock, I went after him, and struck him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And if he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and struck him, and killed him. Your servant has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God." Then he said the line that defines the entire story. "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." David's confidence wasn't arrogance. It wasn't naivety. It was built on remembered victories. Every lion he fought alone in the wilderness, every bear he faced with nothing but a sling in his bare hands, Those weren't wasted moments. Those were training. Those were proof. Those were the small, unseen battles that prepared him for the giant one. This is such a powerful truth for anyone watching this right now. The battles you're fighting in private, the ones nobody sees, the ones that feel small and insignificant, they are not wasted. They are preparing you. Every time you get back up after failure, every time you push through when you wanted to quit, every time you overcame something hard and nobody clapped for you, that's your lion and your bear. That's the proof you'll stand on when your giant finally shows up. Saul finally relented and said, "Go, and the Lord be with you." Here's the detail that's often overlooked but incredibly important. Saul tried to dress David in his own armor, his bronze helmet, his coat of mail, his sword. David put it on and tried to walk, but he could barely move. David said, "I cannot go with these, for I have not tested them," and he took them off. Think about what this teaches us. Saul's armor represented someone else's method, someone else's identity, someone else's way of doing things. It wasn't wrong, it just wasn't David's. It didn't fit who he was or how God had built him. So many of us try to fight our giants wearing someone else's armor. We try to succeed the way someone else succeeded. We try to heal the way someone else healed. We try to lead, speak, create, or fight using someone else's method instead of trusting the tools already placed in our own hands. David took off the armor and instead picked up what he knew: his staff, his sling, and 5 smooth stones from the stream. Simple, familiar, tested, his own. Your gift doesn't have to look like anyone else's gift to be powerful. Stop trying to fit into borrowed armor. Walk into your battle with what's actually in your hand. Now picture this moment. David walks down into the valley. No armor, no sword, just a shepherd's staff, a sling, and a pouch of stones. Goliath sees him and, according to the text, disdained him, for he was but a youth, ruddy and handsome in appearance. Goliath mocked him. "Am I a dog, that you come to me with sticks?" He cursed David by his gods, and said, "Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and to the beasts of the field." This is the moment where fear tries to have the final word. Goliath was using every weapon he had, not just his spear, but his voice, intimidation, mockery, threats, because giants don't just fight with weapons. They fight with words designed to make you shrink, doubt, and retreat. But David's response is one of the most powerful declarations of faith ever recorded. "You come to me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. And I will give the dead bodies of the host of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all this assembly may know that the Lord saves not with sword and spear. For the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand." Read that last line again. The battle is the Lord's. David wasn't relying on his own strength. He wasn't pretending he was stronger than Goliath. He was declaring a truth bigger than the size of his enemy, that the outcome didn't depend on muscle, height, or weaponry. It depended on whose side you were standing on. Then it happened fast. Goliath moved toward David to attack, and David ran, not away, but toward the battle line to meet him. He reached into his bag, took out a stone, slung it, and struck Goliath right in the forehead. The giant fell face down, on the ground. One stone. One moment of complete faith in motion. David didn't even have a sword of his own. He took Goliath's sword and used it to finish what the stone had started. When the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they turned and ran, and the army of Israel rose up with a shout and chased them down. The giant who had terrorized an entire nation for 40 days was defeated in a matter of seconds, by someone the world had already written off. So why does this story still matter thousands of years later? Because giants haven't gone anywhere? They just changed shape. Maybe your Goliath is a financial crisis that feels impossible to overcome. Maybe it's an addiction you've been fighting in silence. Maybe it's a diagnosis, a broken relationship, a dream that everyone told you was too big, too risky, too unrealistic. Maybe it's a giant of self-doubt, whispering every single day that you're not enough, not qualified, not ready. Here's what David's story teaches us. Your past battles were never wasted. Every hard season you survived was quietly building the courage and skill you'll need for the battle ahead. You don't need everyone's approval to move forward. David's brother mocked him. Saul doubted him, but David kept walking toward his purpose anyway. Stop wearing armor that isn't yours. Trust the tools, gifts, and strengths that are authentically your own, even if they look small compared to what everyone else is using. And the size of your giant is not the size of your future. What looks impossible from where you're standing is not impossible from where God is standing. And finally, the battle was never yours to win alone. It never is. Strength, timing, favor, and outcome are not entirely in your hands. And that is not a weakness. That's actually where real peace comes from. If this story spoke to something you're walking through right now, I want you to remember this. You were not created to be crushed by your giant. You were created to walk into that valley with whatever is already in your hand, and trust that the battle was never about your size to begin with. Whatever you're facing today, don't wait for permission. Don't wait until you feel qualified. Pick up your stone and take the step. Let's take a moment to reflect on what makes this story so timeless. It's not really about a giant at all. It's about perspective. Everyone else in that valley looked at Goliath and measured him against themselves. They saw his height, his armor, his weapons, and they shrank in comparison. David looked at the exact same giant and measured him against God instead. That single shift in perspective changed everything. The size of the problem didn't change. What changed was what David was comparing it to. This is worth sitting with for a moment. So often, we walk around measuring our giants against our own strength, our own resources, our own courage, and we come up short every time, because we were never meant to face them with only what we have. The moment you start measuring your giant against something bigger than yourself, the fear starts to lose its grip. Notice also that David didn't wait for the fear in the camp to disappear before he acted. Everyone else was still frozen. The armies were still terrified. Saul was still doubtful, but David moved forward in the middle of everyone else's fear, not after it. Courage was never the absence of fear around him. It was action in spite of it. And one more thing worth noticing. David ran toward the battle. Most of us, when we finally decide to face our giant, do it reluctantly, dragging our feet, delaying, hoping the moment will pass. David ran. There's something powerful about approaching your fear with urgency instead of hesitation. About deciding that today is the day, instead of waiting for the giant to eventually go away on its own. He never did. Giants don't retreat. They have to be confronted. So here's the question worth asking yourself today. What has been shouting at you, day after day? The way Goliath shouted at that army. What has been wearing you down, not with one attack, but with repetition? And what would it look like for you to walk into that valley today with whatever is already in your hand? You don't need someone else's armor. You don't need everyone's approval. You don't even need to feel fully ready. You just need to take the step, trusting that the outcome was never resting on your shoulders alone to begin with. There's one more layer to this story that deserves attention, because it changes how we understand victory itself. After Goliath fell, David didn't stand over the body celebrating his own strength. He used the giant's own sword to finish the fight, almost as if to make the point that the very weapon meant to destroy him became the instrument of the giant's defeat. Sometimes the thing that looks like it was built to break you ends up becoming proof of what carried you through. Think about the soldiers watching from the hillside that day. For 40 days, they had measured Goliath by his height, his armor, his reputation. And then, in seconds, everything they believed about the situation was proven wrong. The lesson isn't just for the ones stepping into the valley. It's for everyone standing on the sidelines too. Sometimes we spend so much energy fearing something on someone else's behalf that we forget fear was never the whole story to begin with. It's also worth noticing what David didn't do. He didn't wait until he felt fearless. He didn't demand guarantees before stepping forward. He simply brought what he already had: his experience, his conviction, and his 5 stones, and trusted that it would be enough. Not because he was strong on his own, but because he wasn't relying on his own strength in the first place. There's a quiet kind of bravery in that. Not the loud, chest-beating kind, but the steady kind that shows up while your knees are shaking, while the people around you doubt you, while the giant is still shouting. That's the version of courage most of us actually need. Not the dramatic, cinematic kind, but the kind that gets you back up tomorrow to face the same struggle again, with a little more resolve than the day before. So here's the question worth carrying with you after this video ends. What has been shouting at you, day after day, the way Goliath shouted at that army? What has been wearing you down, not with one attack, but with repetition? And what would it look like for you to walk into that valley today with whatever is already in your hand? You don't need someone else's armor. You don't need everyone's approval. You don't even need to feel fully ready. You just need to take the step, trusting that the outcome was never resting on your shoulders alone to begin with. If this video encouraged you, hit that like button, subscribe for more messages like this, and drop a comment below telling me what giant you're facing right now. I read every single one. Until next time, remember, the battle is not yours, it's his.